AI is not a light switch. People may think it is, but it isn't. It takes time, it takes effort, and you need to have a real strategy about how you want to deploy that within an organization. We've looked at player recruitment as kind of like the phase one, sports science. How do we use data to keep players fit? How do we look at preventative injuries? And how do we be smart around kind of building biomechanical profiles of players so we can be much more data-driven in what we're doing? How can we potentially use agentic AI to look at data to spot early signs of injuries? Because that's a huge football issue. You spend a lot of money on players and on wages and fees and this kind of thing, but if they get injured, they're sat on the bench or they're sat on the watching the game, causes problems. The first kind of stage is what provides us quick ROI, and actually then what's the longer play.
Today's episode is brought to you by Omni. Most companies I speak to want AI analytics but are failing to put projects into production. That's where Omni's different. It's the semantic brain that grounds AI in the heart of your business logic, giving you governed answers, whilst also the depth to identify root causes. It's intelligence everywhere, from your spreadsheets to their chat feature, even within your product. Omni moves you beyond the dashboard. Don't just take my word for it. Trust teams like Perplexity and Synthesia that are already using Omni to deliver intelligence that people trust. Check out them in the show notes or visit omni.co. That's omni.co. Now, back to the show. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stacked Data podcast. Today we're joined by someone who's possibly has one of the most unique roles in UK data. Stuart Fenton. He's the first ever head of AI in English football and currently leading AI strategy at Reading FC. Stuart's had a wild journey to where he's got to today, starting off in global telecoms. He spent years in cutting-edge applied research at leading universities and has even advised the UK government as an AI specialist before landing his job at Reading FC by actually tweeting the owner from a faceless account. So in today's episode, we're going to dig into, I suppose, how AI is actually being implemented in elite sport, how to build data strategies with a limited budget, how to cut through hype and I suppose choose the right vendors and partners for yourself, and how Stuart is building the blueprint for sort of League One, League Two clubs to eventually replicate data-driven AI strategies in football. So yes, the conversation is about AI, but also more importantly, we're going to touch across commercial acumen, partnerships, particularly around doing things in that balance of pace and quality. Stuart, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind intro there. It was definitely a wild journey I've kind of gone through to get into football, but loving life here and really excited about the future of what we're doing here at Reading Football Club.
Excellent. Oh, look, I mean, I was to give a bit of an intro and a summary, Stuart, but you've had quite an unconventional route in to your role now. I think that's pretty common across the data space. But yeah, for the audience that doesn't know you, could you walk us through your journey to date, and I suppose what have been the common threads and ties that bring it all together?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, as you mentioned, I started my career in global telecoms. So I did a number of years there working at Vodafone Global, BT. Did my time in kind of commercial selling and account management, always looking at kind of innovation, how organizations could innovate, how they could use new technology. I then kind of took a bit of a sideways step, and I have a master's in international economics. Wanted to use that a little bit more, so I went into the public sector and started doing kind of digital growth strategies, how I can actually look at economic and regional growth. That got me working with a number of different partners at Hampshire Council. I then went to go and work for the University of Surrey, and that's really where I kind of got involved in the AI bit. I was kind of surrounded by some incredibly talented academics. I always had a kind of rule that I wanted to be the dumbest guy in the room, and which kind of worked out nicely because I just absorbed all this information from academics who were really passionate about it, and that was kind of around the 2016-17 time, so it was still quite early. We hadn't had the kind of ChatGPT AI explosion that we've seen in the last couple of years. So I absorbed as much knowledge as possible. I left the university, created my own consultancy business. I was consulting people on kind of 5G, AI, IoT. It was then I kind of got appointed by the UK government as their AI specialist. So I was working at the Department for International Trade, working with partners all around the world who were doing this amazing AI stuff. And then I became a managing director of a technology business, worked with sports teams, innovative organizations, and then took a little bit of time out after that. So I worked there for about 2 and a bit years, nearly 3 years. Went on sabbatical as I kind of wanted to realign. I was managing director, but I kind of missed doing the innovative stuff. Actually making the real innovation happen as a kind of managing the people that were doing it. And then this opportunity came up with Reading. So I'm a Reading FC fan, have been for 30 years. And then we had the takeover by Rob Kuig, who used to own Wycombe Wanderers. When he kind of came out to the media and to the fans, he said, look, I'm starting up, I'm taking the club over. I'm creating a business council, a found council and an AI council. Not sure what I need or what I'm going to do with that, but I know I need it. And I know that's the way the game's going. So as you say, I reached out on a faceless Twitter account, whatever you want to call it, saying, look, Rob, I've got a few ideas. I've been a Reading fan for 30 years. I'm really keen to get involved, use my expertise and everything I've learned over the last couple of years to put together your AI strategy. And we had a few video calls and back and forth. And then he invited me down to the training ground and made me the first head of AI in English football, which is a huge honour, a huge opportunity. And something I've been loving for the last few months. And especially kind of now we're getting real traction in some of the projects that we're doing.
Amazing. I think it's great. We're recruiters at Cognify, so spending the time trying to find people jobs, and I think showing innovation and trying to find different routes to speak to the right people shows that it clearly works, whatever level you're at. And excited to dive into some of the projects that you've already kicked off and are already showing impact. Stuart, obviously, I suppose there's a lot of hype in the industry in general, but obviously particularly in sport right now. What do you think most people misunderstand about applying AI in a football context?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge I see is people try and shoehorn technology into sport. They think it works in the oil and gas industry, it works in the finance industry, so it's got to work in the football industry or the sport industry, and it doesn't. There has to be a real alignment with partners who understand sport and football. Take our partnership with Score. It works really nicely because they have a football consultant. So Brian McDermott, the ex-Reading manager, he understands football. He's able to translate the technology and the application into football terms. I get pitched a lot of things every single day, and it goes down to we work in other industries. We're sure this is going to work for you, and it doesn't. Ultimately, you have to have a solution that's scalable and something that can actually fit into the football environment, and actually into an environment where there's not a lot of data people. At League One level, even League Two, you don't have huge teams behind the scenes. You have a lot of football expertise, but you don't really have a lot of data expertise or a lot of technical people. So it's like you need to make sure that what you're selling is suitable for the audience, suitable for football, but actually translatable into football as well, because there's no point, here's our solution, but you're going to need 3 data scientists to work out what this can do when, you don't have the budgets to have that amount of data scientists. The money goes on the pitch. So it's definitely an interesting one. The hypes, well, with AI, like we've seen it throughout, there's tons of hype. There's tons of stuff out there that says they can do things and it doesn't actually do it. Or it's just data visualization. And, that's one thing that we see is that, what's the actual true AI element to it? What can it actually do rather than, visualize something? So, that's the challenges we have, but, that's part of the role that I enjoy as well, like actually digging under the surface of what the products are, what the partners are doing, and actually seeing where the true AI application is.
That's really interesting. How do you actually dig under the surface? I think it's really hard to sometimes, and really easy to get caught up in the buzzwords and I suppose the shiny pitch. What's your process to actually understanding, is this product or partner going to really add value to me?
For me, it's working with the technical guys. So, we get the sales and the marketing and it all looks really flashy and everything looks great and it looks great on the presentation and the PowerPoint and you're like, yeah, this does look amazing. But for me, I spend a lot of time with technical people. So I kind of have the technical expertise that I built out through my time in telecoms, in academia, where I had that unique blend of kind of commercial and technical. So once I start speaking to the technical guys and start asking a few probing questions about their underlying technologies, where we can do it, how we can apply it into the club, that's when we get a real feel for what they can do and actually what their capabilities are. A lot of my role is working with the the commercial and the marketing people, but equally probing the technical guys to say, actually, what is this doing? How is it doing it? And actually show me how this works. And a lot of the technical guys are quite excited by that. They don't usually get an opportunity to do it. It usually goes to the salespeople or the pre-sales team to do the selling. Whereas actually I like to fundamentally go into an organization, see what they're doing, see how they're doing it, lift the bonnet a little bit and see how everything works.
Amazing. I suppose it'd be good to set the scene a little as to, I know you're relatively still new to Reading, and it's really assessing where you're at as a data maturity. Where are you at when you've joined? It'd be good to get an understanding.
Yeah. So, one of the challenges we had with the takeover is there was, historically had some challenges in Reading Football Club. So when I picked up the team and came to the team, the data maturity wasn't where you would want it to be. But I think that's synonymous with most sports teams. They're good sports or football teams, but actually from a data perspective, they're not data specialists. So you've probably got pockets of information here, there and everywhere. So part of it has been, part of my role has been, right, let's set the data strategy. Actually, what data do we need? Where do we collect it from? How do we store it? How do we keep it safe and guarded? One of the challenges we have is around, say, the academy. We have a category 1 academy, but that's children's data from 21s down to 8s. So you need to make sure that there's rigorous security protocols put around data. We always call the academy the kind of ring-fenced opportunity. It's something that we want to do more with, but we're very conscious from a safeguarding perspective what we can do and who we can work with. So the initial bit's been kind of looking at the first team side, kind of the recruitment, the physical sports science bit, and then kind of now moving on to the business operations side of things. How can we be smart over our stadium? How can we start generating more revenue through subscriptions, through marketing, through different areas, and making sure that we have one coherent data strategy that sits across the club, rather than kind of silos that sit in different areas. Because you'll know from your experience kind of working with partners that historically it's siloed in different areas. People don't either know where it is or how to use it. So a big part of my job has been kind of getting that data level right, because there's no point in me doing the fun AI side of things if the data and the foundations that we're sitting on aren't correct and aren't where they should be.
Yeah, we see it all the time, and I suppose it's what the modern data stack is ultimately coming to try and address, right? The single source of truth, the consolidation of having everything in one place, which makes it easier for the discoverability and ultimately the usage of the products that you're obviously going to build.
Absolutely. And the stuff we see it all the time that people try and jump to the AI strategy or the dashboards or everything, and they forget the fundamental bits at the bottom that need to be done first. I always kind of use the comparison. It's like building something on quicksand. If you just chuck an AI level, an AI strategy on top of things, saying, right, this is what we're going to do, and then when it actually comes to the implementation of it, you haven't got the foundations in place to be able to do it. You waste a lot of time, you waste a lot of money, and candidly in football we can't do that. We need to make sure that we are as effective as possible, we're as cost effective as possible, and put the foundations in place now so that we can benefit in the future seasons. And that's been, a cultural change. We've had to speak, from the team, from the top to the bottom, kind of, this is what we want to do from a data strategy perspective. This is where we want to get to from an AI perspective. And once we've kind of had that cultural change internally, we can then start building out with the partners what we're trying to do, and align everybody as well. I mean, I've worked in organizations in the past and consulted for people who have individual strategies that don't align to a greater strategy, and it fundamentally it always falls over. So for us at the football team, it's like, right, how do we create a coherent data strategy that aligns with what we want to do as a club, that makes sure that we benefit from the technologies that we're bringing in, and that allows us then to choose the partners that we want to work with. Because what we don't want to do is have isolated, siloed partners that deal with one part of the organization, but then we have to go out and fund another part, because there wasn't a strategy in place. So it's been very much strategy building, identifying what we need, why we need it, how critical it is, and building that into a phased journey, because a lot of people think that AI is like flicking the light switch. As soon as we say we've got AI, everything's going to light up, we're going to be smart, we're going to win everything, and it really isn't. It's a really journey that you have to go on. It has different stages, has different phases, and it's identifying what's the ROI that we do it for, and why are we doing it. We won't ever use technology for technology's sake at Reading. It has to give us competitive advantage or operational efficiencies for us to be able to bring it in and justify any investment that we make.
I think it's something that obviously is clearly super critical for you guys at Reading, and I think we can get on to speaking about obviously how important it is with tight budgets to be so focused in on ROI. But I think it's something that you can apply to any data role, whether you're a junior or a leader in any company, is having that understanding of the full life cycle. Where's this data coming from? What's it being used for? Why are we using it? What are the different edge cases? And I think having that open mindset can really help people. I think particularly in early careers, people tend to be quite fixated on just their area that they're focusing in on, and I think having that breadth and understanding across the spectrum can really help accelerate careers. And yourself as a leader in AI, you're talking about data engineering, data modeling, and the foundations which are key. So it's showing that I think that breadth's super important.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm kind of in a privileged position where I get to oversee everything at the club. From a junior level, people will be focused on their own area because that's what they're responsible for, but it's how do you play in that bigger picture. I look at the wider overall strategy, but I have people that come to me saying, well, this is what we need from a data perspective, and it's actually creating these kind of data champions within the team that feel comfortable that they can come to you and say, well, this is what we need, this is how we want to do things. And then just how does that align to what the overall strategy is? Because especially in sports, there's so many different data packages out there. There's so many different things that you can actually do. But they're expensive. They're not, it's not cheap to get data. People spend time manually tagging or automatically tagging things. It's how do we do it effectively? And as you say, like League One budgets, we don't get the TV money that you get in the Premier League. The values of sponsorship are lower because of the eyeballs that see it. So it's like, how do you get the most return for your money, but equally, how do you identify the partners that can deliver what you need to on the budget that you have?
I think you brought up a really interesting point there. Obviously, I suppose about how many areas I think that you could actually go down, and there's so many different applications for AI, but I suppose data in general, particularly obviously in your area, but again across any industry. What's your philosophy to deciding what problems that AI should solve inside a football club? And I suppose it'd be also good to maybe a bit of a framework for people that maybe aren't working in a football club.
Sure. I mean, I have a personal philosophy. I'll never use AI to replace people. I will use AI to empower people, to give them more time back. I'm not interested in bringing AI in to replace anyone. It's just a philosophy I personally buy into. I want to empower people to be better at their jobs, to innovate, to do things differently, but I don't want to bring it in to replace anybody. I'm not, we're a small team behind the scenes, but that's never something, a philosophy I've ever bought into. For me, I have an overall strategy that how I want to deliver AI at Reading Football Club. Every organisation is different. Being candid, and one size doesn't fit all. I look at the football club as a whole. Where can I make immediate impact? Because from an ownership perspective, they want to see results, they want to see returns. So player recruitment is an area that we can tackle. There's lots of data already out there. It's something that we can then build models around, build dashboards around. We can get access to good quality data and start building models. Because if you look from a return perspective, if you bring a player in on a lower value because you've seen something in the data, it's the Moneyball analogy. We call it Reading Ball internally, but we look at the whole club, and that's why we call it Reading Ball. But it's finding undervalued assets that we can then come in, develop, and then sell for profit. It's a way of generating revenue. It's a way of being innovative in the transfer market. But it's something that a lot of teams are doing. So it's like, okay, well, how do you try and differentiate from them? Because everybody's looking at the same data, but how you interpret the data is probably the key. And it's always been my kind of key thing to say, it's people who understand data. You can give any football club or any sports team in the world tons of data, but if they don't know how to interpret and how to use it, then that's the problem. So having people within the team that understand that. I have a data specialist that works for me. He interprets a lot of the data for me. He's allowed me to free up my time to go and do some other stuff while he's working on the recruitment strategy for me. But that kind of provided an ROI that that we need to look at. And then it was about phasing the journey. It was, again, AI is not a light switch. People may think it is, but it isn't. It takes time, it takes effort, and you need to have a real strategy about how you want to deploy that within an organisation. We've looked at player recruitment as kind of like the phase one. Sports science, how do we how do we use data to keep players fit? How do we look at preventative injuries? How do we be smart around kind of building biomechanical profiles of players so we can be much more data driven in what we're doing? How can we potentially use agentic AI to look at data to spot early signs of injuries? Because that's a huge football issue. You spend a lot of money on players and on wages, on fees and this kind of thing, but if they get injured, they're sat on the bench or they're sat on the watching the game, it causes problems. So it's how can we do that? So that was the first kind of stages, what provides us quick ROI, and actually then what's the longer play? So things like the stadium, our connectivity to the stadium we're looking at the moment. What does that unlock if we provide connectivity there? What kind of AI solutions can we bring in? How can we start being different to deliver a new fan experience? How can we provide better connectivity for fans or for people that come to the venue? There's lots of different things that we want to do, and I think the big challenge, and I see this all the time, is AI can fix or help many things, but you can't do them all at the same time. So you have to really, understand from an organizational level, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want out of AI? What do you want out of data? Like, what can you do today? What can't you do today? What would an AI solution essentially allow you to do in 12, 24 months time? And if you did it, what are the ROI and the productivity benefits from it? As I said, I'm not a buyer into it replaces people. Look, we've seen it in other industries that can do it. Not the philosophy that I buy into at all. I've always been kind of a tech for good, use AI, responsible kind of person. So for me, it's identifying the overall strategy, how it aligns, and then creating the cultural change internally to make sure people buy into it, because there's a huge fear around AI, and if people don't understand it, you fear that it's going to take your job or you're somewhat undermined. It's about educating people on the journey, making them part of it as well. Like, what pain points do they have in their job that we could potentially fix using technology, and make sure that we're not shoehorning AI into everything. I mean, like people
sometimes you don't need it.
You don't know. I'm being honest about it. Like, people sometimes get surprised when I say this, but the data shows you a lot of things. Take player recruitment, for example. We have a fantastic director of player recruitment, Brian Carey, who's been in the game a long time. Now, I trust his eye more than the data at times, because he will see little intricacies or little things that the data won't see. So we're always very human-centric in our decision-making. We can arm the recruitment teams and the management teams with all the data that we can, make it applicable to football. But ultimately, it's, we are human-centric at Reading. We want people to be armed with as much data as possible, but it's down to those guys who make the decisions, and the little things that they see and hear and do. For me, that's the most important bit, and it's just complementing as much as we can with the data.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there is that human or not human, like trained instinct, and ultimately that the person who you mentioned obviously has spent years studying and learning. Ultimately, the LLM hasn't, and might not have all that data and can miss other areas. And I completely agree with you about the replacement. I think that we're definitely seeing it in certain pockets of the different industries where there is particularly, I suppose, mundane tasks. But I'm a big believer that AI is it's a tool, and it's a 10x button, and a force multiplier. But again, it is just a tool, and it was not a 10x button unless you know how to use it and apply it in the right way. Stuart, obviously you mentioned your League One, League Two budgets. That's a big factor and consideration for when you're building, and you've said that you're not here to replicate, and ultimately can't replicate what the Premier League model is. But you do want to build out this blueprint, I suppose, for what smaller clubs might be able to replicate, and I suppose help Reading first and foremost, but help push the football industry forward. What does this blueprint actually look like for you? It'd be good to contextualize that a bit more.
Of course. Yeah. So look, fundamentally in football, you have the haves and the have-nots. You have the Premier League money, you get the TV money. I mean, obviously your costs increase because players' salaries, transfers cost a lot more. But equally, you get the sponsorship and you get the TV money, and ticket prices go up, all this kind of thing. So when you're in the lower divisions, it is harder because you don't get the TV money as much as the Premier League gets. So doing projects like this is slightly more difficult because you can spend a lot of money very quickly on AI. If you go out and get a load of stuff off the shelf and start building your own things. Software engineers cost money, and you've got GPU costs. You've got all these huge costs that you can potentially do with AI. So my model is all around partnerships. We are very much building partnerships with the right people who understand football technology but want to scale, grow, and use us essentially as a validation team. The way I've always kind of pitched Reading Football Club from an AI perspective is we want to be that team that you go to validate technology, to get early stage tech into a football club, validate it in a professional environment, use our elite players, athletes, work with us, help bring your product to market quicker, get case study, and then potentially scale out through us as well. So we're exploring things like technology spin out business, where we can commercialize some of the activities that we're doing, be very much a research and development style team, because that's for me the model that is probably most applicable at this level. There's tons of people that want to get involved in football, that they have this great idea, but actually how do they take it into a professional environment? It's a much sought after industry. Football's a sexy industry. It can generate tons of data, but actually getting into it and working with teams is quite hard. We want to kind of change that perception, especially based on our location. We're based in Reading, which is like the Silicon Valley of the UK. That every tech partner is based around us. Our stadiums are stones throw away from the likes of Nvidia and Oracle and Microsoft. You name the tech companies, they're generally in Reading, or their staff live there. So it makes sense for us from a geographical perspective to kind of leverage these organizations, but equally be a partner with them. What I don't want it to be is a transactional partner. Candidly, if I wanted to do that, I'll put a tender out and it's a price war. That's not what I look for. I look for growth partners. I look for organizations, startups, scale ups, people that have had seed investment, right? How can we help and assist you to get into the football industry? How can we kind of use our expertise and our staff's expertise, create these kind of growth partnerships, and then push forward? That allows us to bring AI in cost effectively. It's an opportunity for partners then to develop and learn from us as well. So where I spoke earlier about you have organizations that try and force things into sport. Well, that doesn't work. You kind of go like that. Whereas we want to kind of be that open door. Say, okay, well, look, we will work with you. We will give you the feedback about your solution, how you can potentially, improve it, or if it works or it doesn't work, and then we can look to take it to market with you. So it's very much having this partnership mentality. That's what we've done, because candidly, if we wanted to say, we want to build all our own models, we're going to go and develop 3 different AI products. The time it's going to take from a cost perspective, from a the staff perspective, it just doesn't make sense at this level. But what does make sense is partnering with people who are already doing this, want to work in sports, want to work in this environment, and being an open door to them to say, actually, look, we're keen to work, we're keen to engage, we're keen to do something different. My owner Rob's very key on, we all want to be the pioneers of AI in football. The only way we'll do that is by having strong relationships with hyperscalers, with startups, scale-ups, even from an academic perspective as well. When we look at the low TRL technologies, how do we help and validate that in the real world, taking kind of level 2 and 3 up to kind of the 5, 6, 7s of the world? And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at how we work better with academic institutions, all these type of spin out companies from universities, because they're sitting on some really interesting IP, but it's actually that real world application that we want to do and use, and we think we're in a position at Reading that we can do that.
Amazing. That's great. I think the partnership model, and it sounds like you're only just getting started, and it's clearly working, and also great to give opportunities to businesses, startups, to give them that opportunity to gain real world sort of data, and in a really niche area, right? And especially in the AI space, that data and real world data is going to be so important. Sure, I'd like to take, I suppose, a bit of time to look ahead. What is on the roadmap, really? What are some of the big sort of projects which you've looked at and you're really excited to get their application of AI, and ultimately what are you going to be working on over the next year? I'm sure many other folks that are going to be interested to hear what it is you're going to be tackling.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our phase journey, kind of the stadium and the fan experience is the next thing. Obviously, fans' experience at the stadium is huge for us. We want people to come to football, we want them to enjoy it, but we actually want them to feel part of it. And we're seeing this, across the industry now, like the expectations of fans are growing. We need to make sure that we're aligning with their needs, their expectations. You kind of look at Gen Z, Gen Alpha, what their expectations are in terms of coming to sports, spending money with us, and actually making the experience enjoyable. Personally, I can't control what goes on the pitch, but we can help control what goes off the pitch. And if we can make that experience better, we can make it more seamless. We want people to come to the stadium earlier. We want them to stay longer. We want to really engage with the fans, really kind of hyper-personalise when they come. I want people to come to Reading Football Club and come to the Select Car Leasing Stadium and really enjoy their time there. I want to be seamless in terms of how you buy things, how you engage with us, how you get stats-driven insights. And that's what we're looking at the moment. How can we improve the fan experience? How can we make it better? How can we make it, that people want to come to the stadium earlier, stay longer, incentivize them to do that. But actually make it an experience. And, with the American ownership, we've done a number of different things like fireworks night, and we've got Louisiana Day coming up because a lot of our ownership's based out of there. This is then how do we apply, AI and technology into the experience just to improve things. And that could be things like wayfinding. It could be, there's millions of different things, and that's the exciting part of my role, that not only do I look at kind of what's now, what's available, but actually moving forward, how can we do things differently, but how can we be that blueprint for others? So, if they're looking at embarking on an AI journey, they can kind of say, okay, well, Reading did this is how they started, maybe we should be seen. Because other teams are synonymous with this in recruitment. We look at Brighton, Brentford, they're the guys that everybody looks at from a recruitment perspective because they were doing the AI bit way before everyone else. We want to be seen as that team that people look at as a blueprint. Okay, well, they're doing that, so we should be working with them, or working with the partners that we're working with, because they've got the track record of delivering it for Reading. If they can do it at Reading, they can do it here, there, everywhere.
Excellent. And I suppose part of your journey is going to be also growing out your team to help execute on that.
Yeah.
What is it that you look for when you look to hire data professionals across the spectrum?
Yeah, as I said, each organisation is different. It's how people fit into that organisation. So from a football perspective, I have a guy, Sean, who works for me. By chance, he is a Reading fan as well. But he was doing a lot of the work kind of as a fan and doing that analytics pages and that kind of thing. And he reached out to me a bit like I reached out to Rob to say, I'm looking at opportunities. This is what I'm doing. This is how I make it applicable to football. This is my expertise. I've been to over 500 EFL games over the last couple of years. He really spelled out my passion is football. I'm, data football. I'm putting in kind of the hard yards, from a personal perspective to hone my craft. Really keen to do that in the professional environment. So a lot of it is cultural fit. How do they come into an organization? Do they understand the workload, what the expectations are, what the deliverable is going to be? We are a small team behind the scenes. How do they fit in from an environment perspective? Ultimately, what value do they bring to the organization? Sean had been building a number of things on his own, doing it as a fan analytics page. And for me, that was like, well, if he's doing it that, why can't we do this internally and start, really leveraging the expertise that he's got? But as I said, no organization is the same. One person might be a specialist in football and understanding how you translate it, but then you go to an automotive industry or you go to another industry. I looked, do they have that experience in that sector, which means they get an understanding? Because when I bring people in, I kind of give them the authority and trust to be the expert. Sean's coming, he is my data specialist. You are the guy that I will go to when I need something. Or if you bring someone else, they have to be that industry expert. They have to have that experience, but ultimately understand how they can translate things. And one of the expertise that we have internally is how do we take very complex data and translate it into football terms. And it's not just from a lack of data and knowledge, it's actually time. People don't have a lot of time to go through masses of data. We need to really translate things into tangible insights, and you need that understanding of the industry to be able to do it. So that's what I look for. I've always been somebody that empowers people. I like people to come in and feel like they're empowered and that they can take ownership of it. I've never been a micromanager. I've always been kind of someone that's instilled trust and kind of that authority to go and do what they're hired for, and to come up with ideas as well. One thing I really love is when people come to me and it's usually I get a WhatsApp at like 10:30 at night. I've had this amazing idea. We need to do this. And you're like, great, that's exactly what I want. People that feel like they can come to me and say, yeah, Stu, I've got this really cool idea. I want to do this. Can I do it? And that's how I've built my career. That's how I've operated really good data people. I've had some fantastic people that have worked for me in the past, and it's just giving them that freedom as such to feel like that they can come to you and say, actually, Stuart, I know you head up there. I really want to do this. I feel this is how it's going to buy into this, buy into your strategy. And that's why I'm quite an open book about our strategy, because if the people that work for me don't understand it properly, then how can they develop and grow and do anything that has any meaningful value?
Yeah, I think you make a really interesting point. You obviously it's football context and the importance of actually understanding what is going on and why. And I think that rings true for everything in data. I think a lot of people often say data is data. I don't always agree with that, because there are so many different applications of data, and why AI is so hard to apply in data is because everyone has their own flavor and everyone has their own context to it. And I think as we move into a more AI driven world, data professionals need to be more context savvy and be closer to the business, whatever that is, whether that's football or fintech or automotive.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's what can data do? I mean, a lot of people don't know. I mean, this is, there's a big education process. When I came in, it was like, here's the power of data and what we can actually do with it. Even like using ChatGPT or Grok or anything like this, it's an education process for a lot of people. They might not have used it. They might have used certain things. You might have used Copilot because it's installed on their laptop, but actually when you take the time and show people, and one thing that we do internally as well, we run internal training sessions for people, even the players. We've upskilled some of the players in terms of using AI. Here's what it can do, here's the art of the possible, and it's just de-fearing it, because I think some people do fear it, and they're not sure what it can and can't do. So we're really strong on that kind of internal training process to make sure that people know what it is, know what they can do with it, and actually feel comfortable using it and asking questions. And that's what we have a very open book in terms of things at Reading. If people have got a question, they can come to me, they can ask. They don't feel like that they need to book in a meeting. It's just they can give me a call saying, Stu, can I do this, can I do that, how does this work? And just creating that inquisitive culture that enables people to think differently.
Amazing. We're almost at the end of the episode, and I'm sure if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about Reading Football Club and how Stuart's applying AI, I'm sure, as Stuart's mentioned, it can be definitely an open book. And if this anything we've mentioned in the episode resonates with something you'd like to be part of, then I'm sure Stuart would appreciate you reaching out. Before I let you go, Stuart, I suppose the final question is, what's the biggest ambition for AI at Reading FC over the next few years? We're sitting down here in 2 years' time. Like, what does success look like for you?
I mean, look, ultimately, success at Reading Football Club is winning. We're a football club. We want to win. Candidly, we want to win. We want to get promoted to the Championship and Premier League. From an infrastructure perspective, we are Premier League facilities. The only thing is our league standing doesn't align with our facilities. So for me, if we look back in 2 years, we want to say that actually once we got the data strategy sorted, we started implementing the things that gave us the marginal gains that AI assisted in helping us get up. Candidly, winning is everything in sports. It's winning, it's creating the coherent strategy, and then being synonymous with the teams that are doing it. Like I mentioned Brighton, Brentford. I would love other teams to actually, do you know what, Reading were the team that from the lower part of the pyramid implemented technology, implemented AI, brought on a good head of AI as well, and helped us get up the league. That for me, that's kind of like jokingly my nirvana. We know, as I said, we're human centric as well, but we want AI to show its part, what it can do, and Reading FC to be the pioneers of doing this in the Football League.
Excellent. Well, Stuart, thank you ever so much for joining me. It's been great to hear about sort of what your plans are, and I suppose this blueprint that you're building. And I love the human-centric nature of it. I think it's obviously clearly already resonating well within the club. And yeah, wishing you and Reading all the best for the rest of the season.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, everyone. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick one from me. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you could hit that follow button or leave us a rating. Even better, pass the show on to a friend who might also get some insight from it. It really helps us grow the community and continue to share amazing conversations. I also wanted to take a minute to talk to you about Cognify. For those of you that don't know, Cognify is the leading recruitment partner for modern data teams. We help some of the world's best organizations scale data and drive real value from the hires that they make. If you're thinking about building a team or making a hire and you're struggling with talent or just want some insights on the market, then I'd love to jump on a call with you and tell you a bit more. Equally, if you're looking for a job and want to find your next dream role, then reach out to myself or any of the Cognify team. We'd be happy to see if there's anything on our books that we can help you with and give you general advice on the industry. Finally, a big thank you to Omni, this season's sponsor. If you'd like to learn more about the AI analytics that Omni can deliver you, then check out the link in the show notes or come speak to me. I can happily point you in the right direction. Again, thanks for listening and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time.